All right, shall we do this? We'll do that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do this and that.
All right, let's do this and that.
That's what he said.
Right, my intro. Are you kidding me? Always. That's okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 64 of the Board Game Gateway podcast. This week, coming to you online from the Board Game Gateway studios. We are once again getting around the microphones here digitally for your listening pleasure. My name is Neeber, and I'm your host for today's, this afternoon's, this evening's, whenever you're listening to this podcast episode. And around the digital thing that you can see here, around the board game table that we have, I've got Mr. Damien.
Hello.
We have Mr. Ralph.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah, that's
Hi.
you.
Sorry, I'm
And
up.
in that corner, we got Mr. Joel.
Hello.
If this
I
is the
was playing
first...
Clock Tower to 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, God. It's going to be one of those
Probably playing
podcasts.
Clock Tower
First time
right
doing
now.
this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't done this one for a while. If this is your first time listening to the Board Game Gateway podcast, we are your entry point into the world of board gaming and fun times. And on this week's episode, we are going to be having a chat about 3 different games. We're going to be having a chat about Spectral. Now, I want to point out, I did say this last week, but we're actually going to talk about it this week. I promise you. We're going to talk about Cthulhu, Death May Die, a big, fun, cooperative game. We're also going to be having a quick chat rehash of King of Tokyo, as one of our new hosts has been playing it and wanted to have a quick chat about it, as well as our gateway game of this week, which is going to be Nekojima, which was provided to us by Let's Play Games Australia. Now, we are also going to have our discussion topic at the end of this episode, which this week will be about sequelitis and the idea of board gaming. Is it falling into the modern day movie trap of, relying on well-known IPs more so than going towards new IPs in the board gaming industry? We'll get to that point. Before we get there, though, I do want to shout out 2 comments that came to us on the Board Game Geek post that we do every week in our blog that we do. The first one came from Nicholas G. He, first of all, this was in response to our discussion topic, which was all about, how much do you care about theme versus mechanics when buying a board game? And Nicholas G, he first started us off by saying, for me, it's probably 80% theme and about 20% mechanics for him. And then Peter Rich, he followed up with that and basically said, both are required for me. However, a great theme is worthless without good mechanics, and vice versa. So some really interesting comments going there. If you want to watch our full discussion, make sure you go to our YouTube page, www.youtube.com/@BGGateway, and you can find that discussion topic there. But that's enough from me at the top of this episode. We are going to start this one off. We're going to pass to Joel very quickly to kick us off this week, as he's been playing a bit of King of Tokyo. And for those of you who haven't played it, we did talk about this in an episode nearly 18 months ago. But Joel, give us a quick refresher about King of Tokyo and some of the games that you've been playing.
Yes, King of Tokyo is pretty straightforward. If you've played any Yahtzee-style games before, you're going to get a set of dice. You get to roll them, keep the ones you like, roll them again, do that one more time. Essentially, those dice will give you a couple options, pretty simple stuff. You're going to be controlling your character who is trying to take out the other characters or last until he has the most points. And with these dice, you're going to get a couple of options. You can either keep dice that attack the other characters. They might heal your character. It might give you some sort of energy that you can spend on new abilities, or it just gives you some points if you want to play it. Just keep it nice and simple. And for the most part, the game's only in 2 sections on the board. You are either in Tokyo and attacking everyone, but if you are in Tokyo, you're also getting attacked by everyone as well. So the sort of characters will move in and out as you go around. And yeah, it's like, I thought it was really good personally. I've only just started playing it. It's sort of been on my list for quite a while. I finally picked it up at a local store and then got around to playing it. I thought that it was really, really quick, like barrier to entry. None of us had played it before, and with probably less than 5 to 10 minutes or so, we'd already started playing. And within about a minute or two, we're already sort of laughing, having fun, like really enjoying the elements of it. Like obviously very high like player interaction as well. One of those games that we sort of played 5 or 6 times as you open the box, and just could not stop playing it. Basically, yeah, really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
King of
Yeah.
Tokyo is one of those games that has really settled itself into the board gaming zeitgeist. It's very
Mhm.
well known for its for the arty style rolling and the push your luck element of that. But I've always loved about that the theme is like we're all monsters just trying to destroy Japan, except we're the one who can destroy it better. But it's like no, you're not allowed to destroy Japan. And you just start getting whacked by everyone. Like get
You
out!
can't destroy Japan. I've got to destroy
Yeah,
Japan. Come on, get on my way.
But I've got the
Um,
most points.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's the thing I love about the games. First of all, I am always the penguin because, well, the penguin is the
we'll see
best.
about that.
The penguin is
Right.
always
I
the
can
best.
see the box right behind you, Damon.
Yeah,
Right behind
yeah,
on that shelf
yeah.
right there.
So it is that.
I've got
So
it
yeah,
too.
so King of Tokyo, it is too. Yes, very good. You got the black box though, don't you? No, I don't. I got the
Is it the
OG.
original?
One of
So,
our other mates, our mutual mates, they've got the black box as well. Yeah. Okay, yeah. But look, King of Tokyo is great. It's one of those games that you can put in front of kids and adults alike, and everyone has the same level playing field because you're just rolling dice. That's all you're doing. The characters are effectively all the same. There are like you could get an expansion which then gives the characters unique abilities and gives you more options.
Mhm.
But you can take it or leave it. I think it's fine either way. But in its purest form, it's great. It's just you're rolling dice. You're turning around to your mates or your kids, and you're saying, "I'm going to go into Tokyo this time. You're all going to get smacked in the face by me. It's going to be amazing." And then the best part is the moment the very next person hits you, even if they hit you once, you go, "Yeah, I've had enough. I'm going to jump out of Tokyo." No, and when you vacate Tokyo, the person who hit you has to go into Tokyo. And so you get this really great bit of tension where sometimes someone has no choice but to hit you because on the third roll, that's what's left. And they may only have one health. And you've just gone, yeah, I think you should go
That's
into
fine.
Tokyo
Yeah, I
now.
might just jump out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
strategy behind it. Yeah, no, I've
So
played this
it,
a lot with large family groups as well.
Mhm.
I found it teaches the mechanic of, oh, this is health and I lose health. Like that as an introductory to board gaming is, a learning moment, like that's, yeah, I know a lot of people play video games and stuff, but a lot of people don't, like a lot of kids don't. Well, nowadays they do, but they
And if-
see those things where they go for those big combos, those big hits, or that big heal turn, or that big energy turn to buy a power up. So it's really cool when you see someone pull those things off, even if it's not even yourself. You're just like, wow, I'm impressed. That was great.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's good. The sort of levels of familiarity in there, like obviously very similar to Yahtzee style mechanics. So any older generations that would be looking to try out a new game, this is something that once we get past like the basic card games and like let's try something a little bit different. Like this is something you're not going to have to learn too many things. You can see what pictures on a dice are, and you already understand the mechanic. The only difference now is that you've got a bit of health, and we'll buy some cards and there's only 3 cards at a time, so it's not a massive amount of information to take in. I just feel like it sort of bridges that next gap to get them into different mechanics and more extravagant games.
I thought the mechanic of when you're in Tokyo, you get points every round for staying in
Mhm.
there, and it's harder to stay in Tokyo, but because you're getting hit at by everyone. But I thought the mechanic of you can't heal while you're in Tokyo,
Yeah,
I think that's such a cool little thing. If you take that little rule out of the game, it's not as good.
yeah. I feel
great.
like every single time that someone says that they're going to stay in Tokyo, there's a bit of a
Mm,
hush over the table, like, "Oh, he's going to stay, going to get hit
yeah,
again." Like, yeah.
I
I
do,
feel like
yeah,
it just created a lot of moments like that, where it's like,
yeah.
oh, you decided to buy that card, or you went for the 3 points, or oh, you've gone for all the claws. You're gonna like. It didn't matter what action I did, but it was a moment, no matter what, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot of little memorable quips throughout the game.
it plays really well on Board Game Arena as well.
Oh, okay.
But it really does shine in person because you're more invested in everyone's role. In Board Game Arena, you can kind of tune out and just tune in when it's your turn. But
Yeah.
yeah, it really shines in real
Yeah.
life, as most
Uh,
board games do.
we've talked about it a
King of
lot of
Tokyo.
times. Oh, you go there. It's okay.
I was just going to say, King of Tokyo is one of those few family games that has stand-up moments where it's like
Mm.
someone knows,
This is the
like
do or die
you'll
roll.
say, Yeah, that's right. You say you have to roll 4 claws, and the whole table stands up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's stuff.
And if
It's
you
great
don't,
for
you've
that.
only got 1 health left, and we're coming for you.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry,
I,
D. Yeah,
no, I was just
I
gonna
just want to
say,
say
like,
that.
you very on the what I was about to say, which is that what I really love about it is that everyone loves rolling dice. Like it's like, and we've talked about the
Yeah.
tactility of board gaming and why we all kind of like, yes, we enjoy Board Game Arena, and for people who've heard us talk about it, but there is something to be said about games like King of Tokyo, Chicken, even Cthulhu, Death May Die, which we'll come into in a second, where the game is all about the main mechanics is rolling dice, and to actually hold them in your hand and roll, it just doesn't compare to obviously pressing a button and watching someone roll for you. It's something
And
to be said.
and these are chunky dice too.
Yeah.
And there's a power up ability where sometimes you get an extra dice, and that's really
Yeah.
rewarding when you have this different colored bright green die that no one else gets to roll but you do.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like the components in the game are exactly what they need to be. I love how
Yeah.
it's just cardboard standees for the monsters. It's just a board. You get little green tokens that for the like your power sort of the tokens that you use as your income for purchasing cards. But the most important part that they've gone all out on are the dice. It's just
Yep.
this weighted, chunky dice, just perfect. They've done
Yeah.
such a good job with this game.
For such a common component to have in a game, I still feel like it's a unique component in there. I don't feel like
Yeah.
I've ever seen anything like it, and it's just dice. Like,
We've
Yeah.
touched on
Yeah.
this when we spoke about it in a previous episode as well, but the designer Richard Garfield is the guy that did Magic the Gathering.
yeah,
Yep.
It's a completely different vibe. Like
Yeah.
it blows your mind when you see designers do such different works like this and are still successful.
yeah.
All right. Well, good to hear about King of Tokyo. If you'd like to hear our full discussion from our previous episode, go and check out episode 33 on our YouTube channel or your podcasting app of choice, wherever you listen to us. You can find that discussion there in a previous episode. Speaking of rolling dice, we are going to move from a one small box game about rolling dice and beating up monsters to a very big box about rolling dice and beating up monsters in Cthulhu Death May Die. This is a very big box figure Lovecraftian game, which we happen to have a game of on just earlier this weekend. I'm going to pass it over to the owner of this box because when he brought it over to my house, let's just say that we were all a bit enthralled by the miniatures and what was about to happen. So, Damien, if you wouldn't mind, please explaining to everyone what Cthulhu Death May Die is, and we'll have a bit of a chat about that game.
So Cthulhu Death May Die is in its purest form an Ameritrash dice chucking
Dungeon crawler-esque.
love. Yeah, it's less dungeon crawler and more beat the boss. But there is a little bit of crawling through a dungeon. But it is Lovecraftian themed. It's really funny. It's the Lovecraftian theme that I don't like. I've mentioned on the show before that Lovecraftian is actually more about sort of
Like the
the
psychology,
psychology,
trauma.
Psychological,
exactly right.
area.
Dealing with self trauma and such, and the monsters are just representatives of that. But in this game, the monsters are literal. What makes the game though is its simplicity in the theme. So what the game can play up to 5 people, and you'll have 5 investigators. And the goal of the game is you are taking up to 3 actions on a turn. You are moving through whatever your map may be. In this case, our map was 2 floors in a house. You are trying to either avoid or beat cultists. Your goal is to ultimately disrupt a ritual, and every map will have different ways to disrupt the ritual. So in our game, it was to destroy labs.
Five labs
And
on the board, and we had to kill 4 of them.
that's right. Yep. And then what happens there is you will end up with the boss monster spawning on the map, and then everyone has to go and just wail on this monster. The monster gets stronger as you beat it. So think a la 90s video games where every time you beat the monster, it just comes back, but slightly
Dark
stronger. This
Dark
happens
Souls
here.
with different phases of the boss, essentially.
And then you do that 3 times. If you win, happy days. You move on. But the game itself probably doesn't sound like much explaining it like that. What makes the game, though, for me anyway, are the investigators and the way you use them. So everyone at the beginning of the game will pick a unique investigator. That investigator will have one unique trait that you can upgrade, and then 2 other common traits. And it's common across a pool. I think it's about 5 or 6 different traits, and you'll have 2 of those. So it's entirely possible that 2 investigators will have one overlapping trait. But
Or
typically,
in our
when you
case, we
pick
had
out,
3 of them.
that's right. Yeah, that can absolutely happen. But the very top trait is unique to the investigator. And when you roll dice, your dice will basically have 4 different sides on them. You'll have a blank side, does nothing, of an exclamation mark, which counts as a success. It will have a side with tentacles, and that actually represents you delving deeper and deeper into madness. And it will also have the elder sign, which is a star for anyone who hasn't seen it before. Some characters can enact with that result. But the second bit that kind of makes it really interesting is that delving into madness. Because every time you delve into madness, while your character is getting closer to death, it's actually getting stronger. And there are thresholds along the way. And every time you hit these thresholds, a couple of things happen. One, you get to upgrade one of your special abilities. Fantastic. 2, your permanent, sometimes it's a disability, sometimes it is it's an additional trait that's added to your character, triggers. So in my case, I was a one-armed US officer called Ian. And his trait was pyromaniac. So every time I hit the madness threshold, I would basically set the room on fire, which is bad.
And in
but
our
then we also
particular
had-
scenario, the house was already on fire. And so we were
It was
trying to
already on
extinguish
fire.
it.
Yes, so I spent most of my time just putting out fires that I had started. But like to just to put into context and explain just how much fun it is, we also had one of our investigators was a nun by the name of Sister Beth.
Yep.
And her trait was she would become catatonic. So every time she hit a threshold, she would fall asleep. And when she was asleep, she couldn't be attacked. So she would attack, go insane, and then just fall asleep. And then the monsters would just go, well, there's nothing else for us to do here. And then eventually she would, they would move on, or on a future turn, you could wake up the character and go on from there. It is so silly, this game.
Oh, it was
But it is
fantastic.
so fantastic. It
So
really is like, it's,
I'm just
Yeah.
going to say, so for anyone who's listened to our podcast before, you know, and you've listened to me state that I'm not generally the biggest fan of co-op games. I like them, but I don't generally find enjoyment in beating the admin of the system,
Like
if
the
that makes sense.
system, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So I generally don't. It just is not. It's not rewarding for me to do that. This game was probably the most fun and the most that I've come out of a game going. That was actually a lot of fun. Now that's partially
I
the
think
group that we had. That's
I think it's
partially
because the game doesn't take itself seriously.
yeah,
no, it doesn't,
no.
right? And so to add, so our 4 characters, as you said, so Damo said he was a World War II trooper from the US. That's not how we portrayed him at all. We portrayed him on the other side.
Yeah.
He was a one-armed German soldier who was who was a pyromaniac. We had Nick, as he said, who was Sister Beth, who was prone to going into a catatonic state. We had Hamish, who was a 10-year-old sorcerer girl
She's
using
great.
The kid.
and she was great,
The
but
kid.
she was a kleptomaniac. So every time she went insane, she would steal items from any other player in our group. And then we had myself. I was playing as Rasputin, who was prone to psychotic outbreaks. So my whole thing was that every time I hit the certain threshold of insanity, I would go to the nearest room and just hit everyone for 2 damage. right?
So you're saying everyone in the game needs some sort of therapy.
Absolutely right. Now, what
Basically,
Damon,
yeah.
so as Damon said, the game is super easy and super simple. So what would end up happening as well was we had like you would have three moves in which you would have to do something, right? So you could move three times, that would be one action. You could then hit everyone or hit someone. You could trade with people. You can do all these silly actions. But what ended up happening, what we were giggling so much about was the the idea of the stories that were unfolding from this game. So such as we took care of the cultists pretty well. We were handling them all pretty well. We
Yeah.
had three characters, myself, Damo, and Nick. We were all brawlers. So we had to get into a room to be able to use our special dice. So you get a special green dice if you are a brawler, which is great. So we're like, cool, go in there. And then when we realized, well, my character, Rasputin, his character gets free deaths. So like I start the game which I can die once. That's the whole idea. And then that's one of my trait. My trait is hey, you can die and you come back to life with full health. So then I was like, okay. So my whole thing was like, all right, well, as a brawler, I'm just going to get in there. So we took out all the cultists. I then went upstairs, ran into a room where there was this fire vampire up there, whacked the crap out of that, and was able to get the fourth lab. And we summoned Cthulhu by doing this ritual, right? So we're like, okay, this is pretty fun. We're running around, we're killing cultists, we're killing vampires, our abilities are getting stronger, we're getting more dice, we're rolling more dice. This is great. And then the story that Damo was telling was that Nick, as Sister Beth, runs up on his turn as Sister Beth and whacks the crap out of Cthulhu, right? With her, just some whack, 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 just doing damage. Took insanity, then went into a catatonic state right in front of Cthulhu, right? And Cthulhu went, nah, right, and just walked away. But then Nick had an item, and the rules state you can use items as free actions. So his item was a whiskey bottle that he could drink to then get all of his health back. So we had this idea of like Nick walks in, whacks Cthulhu, pretends to be catatonic, and then starts chugging a whiskey only to get back up and then go smack Cthulhu again before rinse and repeat, right? There was these fun stuff, and that was what it was. It was this fun, silly team action game that required us to you actually want to roll the dice because you want to go insane, because when you go insane, you get your upgrades to the powers you have in front of you, but you also get more dice to roll as you become more and more insane in this game.
Yeah.
So the further up you get some extra bonus dice. So it's like, well, I want to fight to kill people, but I'm not worried about going insane because by doing that, I'm going to get a power up at the expense of what's going on. And this just kept going. And it only took us with a teach, took us 2 hours to play the scenario, which was great.
Yeah,
So-
we were going really slow. Like for instance, Nick had his little one there, so we stopped a few times. Like the game itself takes as long as you want it to take.
Yeah.
You could power
Mhm.
through the game in 35 minutes, no problems.
Yeah.
But
You can
the thing I love
also
that
you could also lose the game within 10 minutes.
you can
100% we could
Yeah.
have. Absolutely
Yeah,
we
like-
could have.
like there's only one win condition, but there are so many loss conditions. in
Yeah,
this
I think
game. And if
does
someone
everyone have to
dies-
survive? Like if one player dies, that's it?
If
That's
one
before
player
Cthulhu.
dies
Before Cthulhu.
before
Okay.
before the monster appears on the map, then that's it. It's game over. And I know, and that has happened to me before. The rolls were just bad across the board, and then someone died, and it's like, well, we just
Yeah, I think I was there for that one. I
Game
played this
Yeah.
game with you a long time ago, but I love the whole upgrade mechanics. Like you actually get to think of a path beforehand, and you can see what everything does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool. You can get completely broken combinations of characters. Some characters can just get to a point where they're completely untouchable as well if you
Yeah.
can see that path. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I like about it is that on every turn the story progresses, and it isn't one
Yeah.
of those. It isn't one of those story-driven games that gives you an actual written narrative. It's nothing like that. The stories that come from it are from the experiences in the game, and every time I've played it, a story has been told. Like the first time I ever played it, and again, I don't know if I've mentioned this in the pod before. I played the kid. The kid is my favorite character in the game. And I was also a pyromaniac, so it was like on point for the character. And so at this point, I was on the verge of going insane. I was the most likely one to basically be knocked out of the game. But Hastor we were playing. So Hastor is a different monster. Hastor was already on the map, so that was fine. And I remember all I did, I ran into the room. I was rolling something like 8 dice because I remember I had to roll the green dice multiple times to account for, because you only get a limited number of dice in the box. Rolled all the dice, rolled the extra green dice again, worked out how many hits I was doing, realized I was going to go insane one more time. And then that resulted in me then setting more fire in a room which was already, which was very, very much on fire at this point. I don't know how many tokens were in there already, but as a pyromaniac, I do damage to everyone else that's in the room. And I think on one turn, I dealt something like 10 damage, which is obscene in this game, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And that story, I've never forgotten it, even though this happened years ago. So that's what I really like about this game. And Nee, I'm with you. I'm not huge on co-ops. Like, I mean, I play co-ops with my kids, but they're typically different types of games. It's more so just to get them to the table. But this co-op is one co-op I am always in the mood to play, just because it has such a low overhead to teach and just to get onto the table. Setup is a little bit of a thing because you gotta actually set up the map, but presents really well. Ton of fun to play, and the rules overhead are really low. So
I will say that
game.
the only couple of negatives I had about this game was, one, the setup. That was literally it. Was like, to get this game out and going was a lot of faffing about with boxes and modules and stuff.
Yeah,
which is not a bad thing, especially with a game of like group of gamers, but something you have to know going into the game. Like, okay, you want to have this set up and not have people just bored out of their mind waiting for this thing to happen. And the only other thing that happened that was kind of a negative was that it's not a big deal in our group, but we had Damo. Honestly, he didn't do a lot in the game. He tried, but with 4 of us going around the thing, it was like we were clearing cultists and knocking out dudes really quick, that it meant that by the time that sometimes it would get to Damien's turn, he would just be better served by moving to a position for the next turn to hopefully be there for a thing. And Board Game Geek does say this game does play best at 3. I would agree, just because it would mean that one of the mechanics we haven't talked about is the timer of the game, which is that after every single turn in co-op style, the game draws a card and then we do something bad. Okay, so that bad thing also has a symbol. That symbol, if we match it a certain amount of times, moves Cthulhu down the track. And if we don't finish it in time, the game ends. So therefore, with more players, you get technically less actions because more of these cards are coming out in between your turns, right? So those are really the 2 big negatives. However, I will say, if you can get past the setup and you can get past the idea of like, okay, we're going to play it at 3 or maximum 4 players, there's a lot of fun to be had here. I really did enjoy it.
I think once you know the rules and the setup gets quicker, it is a classic beer and pretzels game for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Because it's not a serious game.
No.
You can try and do something completely absurd and see if it pays off for you. So it's kind of broken, and it's fun to figure out how broken this game can get.
I will say, just before we move on to our next game, I do agree, it's a total beer and pretzels game. But you are right. Like, for me, I felt like this is like, it's basically Arkham Horror, the card game, with less storytelling. Like, granted, the gameplay is completely different, but it's like there was a story there.
Ooh, we can save this one for our discussion topic, I think.
Yeah, we'll talk about that anyway. Anyway, but that was Cthulhu, Death May Die. It was, I really enjoyed it. I'm actually wouldn't mind playing it again. I really did enjoy it. And
Wait, is this a co-op game that you enjoyed?
I know there's always an exception to the rule, Ralph. I mean, here it is. Apparently, there it is. So, all right. So anyway, before I put my head any further in it, let's move on to our third game, which is a game that we said we were going to talk about last week. and we never did. So I'm sorry about that. And I
And
also
that was our
mentioned it.
third game. Moving on to our discussion topic.
Yeah, exactly right. We're going to talk about Spectral by Ryan Courtney. This is a new game that was released earlier this year, and it is a logic deduction game that I really wanted to talk about because when I saw it and played it for the first time, I was like, "This is great." So I'm gonna give you a quick rundown on Spectral. All four of us have had a chance now to play this game, which is great. Spectral is a deduction game which we are all playing separate teams of ghost hunters. We have to go into this mansion, and we have to essentially we are looking for these diamonds in this mansion. However, in this mansion there are going to be curses, and we do not want to be near those curses because our ghost hunters in the mansion will be killed at the end of the game. The winner of the game is the person who gets the most amount of points, and you get points by either one of two ways: either A, having found the diamonds in the mansion, or B, having uh, alive ghost hunters that aren't on the board. The board is a 4x4 grid of cards. These are little square cards, so it looks like a 4x4 grid. And the way that you play the game is you put your little ghost hunters in the slots in between those cards. So, if we have a card, we can put it on any of the slots in between two cards. When you put a ghost hunter down, you can then look at either of the two cards it's adjacent to, and that card will tell you a piece of information. The information that it'll tell you is one of four things. It'll either tell you that there is something in somewhere in this quadrant, diagonally in this quadrant. It'll tell you that there is a card exactly two diagonally away. It'll tell you that the card is two around in a circle, either in the inner or the outer ring of the square, or it'll tell you where on the other side of the board that it is. Okay, so there is a horizontal axis to this board, if you will. So the bottom floor of the house and the top floor of the house, if you will. So you put your ghost hunters down, and eventually we all start putting our ghost hunters down, trying to get information, writing it in our little notebook, and we each get a cool little a little notebook with pencils and things, and so you can take all of your notes down. And eventually it'll start filling up to a point where you cannot place any more of your ghost hunters because they're full. Now the way that you could move forward is that you are given a total of 18 ghost hunters in total: 4 1s, 3 2s, and 2 4s. And that's very important because you cannot break up the 4 ghost hunters and you cannot break up the 2 ghost hunters. Okay, so they're like that. Now, the rule states is that I have to, if I want to kick out someone else or even my own ghost hunter from a particular area on the board, I can do so, but I have to double the amount of ghost hunters that are there. So if Damien had played 1, I can play 2 people. If Joel had played 3, I'd have to play 6 to get into there. And that's a lot of commitment in a game where you only have 18 ghost hunters in total, so it's a 30 of people. Now, that's how we move around the board and we start doing deduction. But the really cool thing about this game is that the second part of your action is that on your turn, you are allowed to either put a person down and get the information, or you can pass. And if you pass, you're not out of the game, you're just out of this round because you may not want to put some people down. You may not want to. You are waiting to hopefully someone kicks you out so that you can have your one back. And the game ends under one of two conditions. Either someone places all 18 of their people on the board, which generally happens, or everyone can pass. And if everyone passes, the game immediately ends. There's no extra turns. Everyone's gone, no, we're all done. Good. We then flip all the cards over. We then put all the curses and diamonds down. We kill everyone adjacent to a curse, and then we divvy up the diamonds based on who's next to them. So if 3 people are next to a diamond over here, that's 12 divided by 3, 4 to everyone. Congratulations. So at its core, the game is about trying to figure out where the diamonds are, and also more importantly, where I don't want to be next to the curses. And it is the perfect deduction level for that really light intro into deduction, I think. And I'm interested to hear what you guys thought about it. Maybe not intro, but like the next step up from Cluedo, if you will. But it plays in 20 to 25 minutes, and that time frame is just mwah. I just love it. I think it's the perfect time to play.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I probably wouldn't consider it the easiest deduction, but I felt like like, there was definitely levels to what we were deducing. So, in the first game that we played, there was, sort of felt like we'd figured most of it out. And then when I played the second time, it was like, I know I haven't been given that information specifically, but based on the other stuff that I've found out, now I've sort of worked out sort of different levels of it. And that sort of grew as we played, like from the first to the second game. And I feel like if we had played a third one again, you'd find out a little bit more without the board directly telling you. And I felt like it was good. We sort of evolved with the game as it went on. But the first game was like quite low barrier to entry. It was quite easy to explain, and it was good to get started.
Yeah, I found even during my second game, I got a crucial rule wrong and forgot how some of the basic deduction rules work. So there was a good reference card, but I found I needed to sort of deduce how to read the reference card at times as well. So I felt like that could have been better. But the game itself was really good. It gave me Search for Planet X vibes. It gave me vibes of Turing Machine, which was another game that we've
Yep.
had on this podcast before, where
Yep.
more Turing Machine because you can play it within 20 minutes and then just play another game. Like it's really quick once you know the rules. Everyone sort of takes their turn and immediately the next player can take their turn. There's not too much thinking involved in actually doing an action. But it does slow down mid game when you can start to like outbid people and you start thinking strategically. Okay, I've got some idea what's happening. I can see what Nee's
Mhm.
doing over there. How do I get in on that action or prevent him from doing that because I think he's on the money there? So there is hedging your bets involved. I didn't get Cluedo vibes. You kind of sold this to me as like this is the better Cluedo. To me, it's something completely separate.
No,
Um,
I agree, and I use Cluedo as the example for people who maybe haven't played a lot of deduction based games outside of Cluedo.
mm,
For me, I mean, I have played and I own Search for Planet X, which I rate higher than this game. I've played Turing Machine, which I think is about on the same. I'd rate the same, but I've also played Alchemists. And Alchemists, if you've played Alchemist, boy, trying to
oh, I
understand
have.
that.
I
Trying to
love
understand. I love Alchemist,
Alchemist is
but
still there, mate.
oh no,
Alchemist. I've got both Planet X and Alchemist. Alchemist is fantastic in the right group. It's a
yes,
thinky game.
I love Alchemists, but man, trying to learn the actual just logic puzzle of
Yeah. I
is
think it's
its
a
own rules
20-minute
teach.
YouTube video just on how the logic puzzle
Just that,
works.
and I feel
Yeah.
right. And so, what I love about Spectral and why this game kind of hooked me a little bit is less about the deduction and more about the social deduction that can go on in this game, which is I've played it now about 5 or 6 times with my brother, and my brother Nick. He really loves this game. This is one of his new favorites. And what he really loves about it is what we all go through, which is the first game. By the end of the first game, you're like, okay, I think I get the puzzle now. And we
Yeah.
immediately re-up for a second game because you've only taken 20 to
Yeah.
25 minutes to do so. The second game, you start making those leaps in logic of like, well, this is all four of the top, they're all A cards, so I know what this one is, and I'm going to start making deductions about, well, if this one is that one, that means it goes over here, and so on and so forth, right? And then when you get to the third game, what you start realizing is, okay, Joel just went to that corner, and then he immediately went 2 diagonal that way. Why did he do that? Why did he just
Yeah.
look at that card and immediately go that way? Was it random? Or did he actually just see that card and he's gone, you know what? I'm just going to stake a little claim here for maybe later in the game so that if no one goes that way, congratulations, I'm going to get some free coins. And that when that moment hits, that's when the game for me just went, this is here we go. We're in now because the game itself becomes less about, well, I need to figure the logic puzzle out and start going,
Yeah.
Hamish just dropped a 4 Ghost Hunter next to that card. Why? Why would he do that? Why is it like that's a lot of commitment of your dudes
And
on the map? Yeah.
that was a big part of the game evolving. Like it sort of started off as almost like Cluedo-esque, as you said, where it's just we're just eliminating things, like in Cluedo. I've seen this thing, so I know that's not there, and then I've seen this other thing, so that's obviously not there. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm thinking it's 50-50 that one of those spaces is going to be a skull. I'm not really sure which one. But then I might see one of your placements, and you're not just placing someone cheap. You've gone and placed one of your biggest guys. You've doubled on remove somebody else because you're sort of claiming that spot on the board. And now I don't feel like I really need to check that spot anymore. I think that spot's good. So he sort of, I felt like it was really good. The interaction, which you don't normally see in deduction games, I feel like it's typically kind of, I've got my sheet, I'm going to keep that over here, and everybody just kind of sits by themselves working it out. Whereas this one was very like, no, I really do need to know what you're doing because I can possibly work out more if I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that I really liked about it was the lightweight deduction, like you guys have said so far. I don't think it plays best at 4 though, because we played it at 4, and I feel like at 4 there's a lot more luck involved because one of the guys at the table just happened to do 3 really good, like search 3 really good locations
Yeah, just
in a
the
row,
starting 3 at random, like.
and that was it, and that completely directed his game. I thought the stuff I was finding was good. It turns out it was nowhere near as good. And that's probably my only thing, but I feel like that's a minor thing. As far as deduction games go, the ability to just set up and go pretty quickly with very, very few rules, I quite liked it. And the thing I really liked about it was that unlike Search for Planet X, where Search for Planet X has like layers of deduction. Like every time you find a new clue, it doesn't necessarily mean you know more. It's just more likely you've eliminated a couple things.
Yeah.
And so you get to narrow your thinking. And then eventually you get to say, okay, my thinking has evolved that I can say it's one of these 2 things. So I'm going to do something in one of these 2 locations. But even still, there's always that little bit of doubt because you're on a clock there. And excuse me. And that is something that I also really liked about Spectral was that your clock is based on how other people are progressing.
Yep.
So if you're trying to go slow to get more information, you need to worry about what other people are doing, which again, I think hurts the game a little bit at higher player counts.
Well,
I do want to play the game again. I really want to play it at 3 though, because I think
Well, look,
3 would be
I've
the
played it
ultimate
at 3,
player count.
Damien, and the game like forcibly put little walls and block sections off of the map. So I feel like it will have a similar vibe because I think the 2 games I played, I couldn't locate any of the cursors in any of the rows until my second last pick.
Yeah.
So I feel like that luck element, no matter the player count, is still going to be a strong thing in the
I
game.
really think, and I know I'm the only one here who has played the game at 5. I actually think this game shines at 5. And the reason is
Okay.
because the pass mechanic at lower player counts does not normally matter because there is always a place that I can put my dudes. And so even if I don't want to go there, I can still go there because I can get some more information. At 5, you really don't want to be throwing out your guys all the time because you don't have enough information without throwing out and your 2s and your 3s, right? However, in saying that, as you said, Damo, the timer is based on other players, which is if someone places down all of their people and someone can just forcibly drop 12 people on one thing if they really wanted to and just and go, that's it, this is the last turn of the game, deal with it, right? That is a negative that because you feel like, well, there's no ebb and flow to where we're going in regards to the progression of the game. But this is where the game says, well, you can still get points, is if that person's wrong, he's just or she has just committed 12 people to something that will either only get them 12 victory points or knock them out of the game completely. So
yeah, and it's totally possible that they don't even get 12 because if it turns out that everyone decides to share the space, the spoils are split evenly. It doesn't matter how many people you have there. So, I thought the game itself was great. I think me talking about luck is an element in almost all social deduction games I've played, except for Turing Machine, because that gives you the clues up front. It has that
I wouldn't
minesweeper
say
effect.
this is a social deduction game at all. This is more of a hedging.
Oh, sorry,
game.
sorry.
Yeah,
I don't mean. Sorry, I mean deduction in general. Sorry. So Turing Machine of the ones that I've played, that more so has that minesweeper feel where you know all the information. You just have to make sure you basically read that information and do things in the right order and eliminate all the low hanging fruit first. So, like I feel like Turing Machine is true deduction. Like it is, it
Yeah.
gives you all the information up front. It's just
Yeah,
you have
it's
to
good.
decipher it properly. But Spectral also has that little bit of a race element. It has that little bit of you can throw people off here and there. It has a lot of those other things that I really liked. That I really like about deduction games. So I quite liked it. Look, I again, I'm curious to play it at 5 because again, it plays so quick. So I'm happy to play it at 5 and see if you are, see if I share the same opinion, Nee. But like I said, again, I just want all listeners to know this is based on one play. Like I'm being critical on this one thing, and I've played it once. So I just want to state that. In my one play, we had one player at the table who romped away with the game because again they picked 3 spots and knew exactly where 3
They
of the
found
curses were
3 curses in the
straight
first
away
3 things. They knew where to
That's
avoid.
right.
in the first 3 turns, and that was it. And it's like, well, there's only 4 curses on the map. I can bank on almost everything. So
It's pretty
yeah,
hard to play a game if someone walks away with the game. Like it'll just be the table that's left over, right?
Yeah. But look, oh god, he's done it again. I just walked into it again.
terrible.
Anyway, that was look, we're gonna move on now because we need to still get to our gateway game of the week, and we're running this one a bit long. So we're gonna get into that. That was Ryan Courtney's Spectral, released earlier this year. We really enjoyed it. We're gonna be playing a bit more of it, so we look forward to maybe reporting back when Damien plays it at 5. Anyway, we're going to move on to now our gateway game of the week this week, which is Nekojima. This was a game that was sent to us by Let's Play Games Australia. They didn't say that we had to say anything good or negative about it. It was just provided to us. So, but go into that with your antennas up. Don't just listen to us talk about it. Go find other people as well if you'd like to learn more about this game. Nekojima is our gateway game of the week because it has now become one of my family favorite games with my young kids. They love this game. And Nekojima is Jenga on steroids. Is the very quick
Right.
way that I'm going to explain this game. Okay, so
Jenga's got nothing on this game, honestly. This
Yeah.
is so fun.
It's great game. So Nekojima is a game. All it is we are building power poles on the Isle of Cats, which is in Japan. This is a well-known island, and we are creating these power poles called denshu, and these denshu are little wooden poles that have a string tied between the 2 of them. There are 3 different lengths of string, and there are also different height combinations of really tall poles and really short poles. On your turn, all you are going to do is you are going to roll 2 dice. This game can also, I should mention, can be played both cooperatively and competitively. Either way, it plays exactly the same. You roll 2 dice. That's going to tell you 2 of 4 locations that you need to put your poles. They are separated into 4 colors: red, green, blue, yellow. Okay. So if I roll a red and a blue, I've got to put 1 pole in the red area and 1 pole in the blue area.
It's essentially like a big circle on the ground that's cut up like
Yeah.
a pizza in 4
Pretty
slices.
much. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once I know exactly what areas they need to go in, I then draw a cube out of the bag, and those will represent the 3 colors of lengths of string that I need to pull out. Cool. I pulled out a blue cube. That means I need to pull a blue string, put them down. Great. Moving on. Okay. Ralph would then go. He would do rinse and repeat, except now he has a blue and a green. So, knowing that I already have, he can start to put a pole in the blue area next to my pole. He can now, if he really wants to, stack his one on top of my pole and bring his one to the floor. The rules of the game are quite simple. No power lines are allowed to touch each other. You cannot wrap the power line around the pole, and no power lines can be touching the floor. That's it. That's the whole game. You'll end up start moving things in and around each other, trying to get these power poles to not fall over, and also not knocking over and not touching each other, which is a massive pain in the butt. The final rub to this game is that if you draw a cube and it happens to be a black cube, there are these cats that are little cardboard cut out of cats, and they hang off of the power poles on their tails, and they put weight in between
So they're kind of
on
like
the
the
po-
traditional monkeys
Yeah,
game.
kind of like
Yeah,
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
connected
Yeah,
monkey
absolutely.
things. Yeah.
100% like that. And they just hang off the power poles and can literally bring things completely tumbling in on each other. This game
Oh,
plays
okay.
in 5 to 10 minutes. It is super light. And I have got my daughter and my brother Nick, who we've talked about already tonight. They love this game. This is a super light, super fun family game. Damo, your kids love it as well, I believe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
So
has no right to be as fun as it is, but it is.
yeah, look,
This
it's great.
you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah. So my kids loved it, especially my youngest. He really, really enjoyed it. It has that Rhino Hero feel when
Yeah.
you start stacking things, except it's wooden poles. So each of these power lines are on either end, or the string, as Nee mentioned, it's wooden posts. And these round wooden posts, they are intended to be stacked on top of other wooden posts.
Yeah.
So, um, and the whole thing of trying to make sure your string does not touch another string is just nothing short of a nightmare half the time.
Oh,
Um, and
great.
it's also one of those games you realize early on mistakes were made when the very first posts underneath we didn't like splay them out wide enough there's too much slack, because then it means that, let's say, if I remember right, it's the red
Really
the
short.
posts with the red string, which is the one that has a very long
Blue.
string.
The
Is it the
blue.
red ones or the blue
The
ones?
blue.
So yeah, we had one game where posts at the bottom were far too close. So it meant that every time a blue cube was drawn out of the bag, we had this massive sag, and it's just trying to make sure that was not touching anything else. It was just hilarious. But we really liked it. The only thing I will say, you need a very, very, very sturdy table.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes,
Any
you do.
Yeah.
bump of the table, the whole thing comes absolutely tumbling down. So we had that. So the table we typically play games on out here is pretty good. But we had someone. Actually, it wasn't someone. Sorry, it was one of the dogs came over, knocked the table, and just knocked the whole thing over. But look, it's fine. Like you said, Nate, it plays in like 10 minutes. It's great when you can get it up to like the 4th and 5th tier. You're high fiving each other.
Sorry, is it a
Depending
team?
yeah,
on
Is it a
it's
team game?
You can
It's
do either.
optional.
you can play it co-op. So
Okay.
so my youngest and I we played it co-op. But I played it competitively with the others.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I personally think it plays better competitively, similar just that sort of Jenga style thing. I actually have only played this once, but I played it at was it PlayCon earlier in the year?
Yep.
And we were sort of waiting to play another longer, I think it was like 2 rooms and a boom or something. I'm like, oh, this will be quick. We'll just quickly play this, just me and one other guy that was waiting. And yeah, so as you said, like, oh, this is pretty straightforward, just 2 pieces of wood connected by a piece of string. I can put a piece of wood on a purple square, like purple triangle. That's fine. Easy
I've never
done.
tried. I've never tried.
It looks easier than you think, and it starts off easy. And we also had just those wobbly event tables that don't
I
really.
think your camera's a bit wobbly too. No.
Oh,
yeah, that's
wow.
probably my table.
Wow.
It's probably me moving it around.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
And it got to the point where I think we had gone. I think the whole game maximum goes for about 7 rounds, and we were up to about the 5th one. And to start off with, it's just me and this guy, just sort of having a bit of fun. Round 2 or 3, we'd sort of collected a bit of a crowd, and there's people watching on, like, oh no, it's gonna fall for sure. By the next 3rd, 4th round, like, we were waiting to play a 20, 30-person game after this. I think we had the entire 30-person group like just circled around us. No, you can't put it there, man. What are you doing? And it was just, I felt like it was very, very entertaining. It did not, it looked like it did not respect to have that much fun, and it just came out. Yeah.
It is a spectacle game. It's a
Yeah.
very spectacle game. Like, it has table presence, and when it starts building up, it's great. I will say that with younger children, it's a perfect game just to play as a cooperative game, because you can help them out. You say, oh no, go there. We're trying to be
Yeah.
together. We're trying to help out. But when they start getting a little bit older, you're like, all right, let's go. Like,
I think,
and you start jeering them on, and it's a lot of fun.
I think any type of game where you build something on a table like Rhino Hero or Jenga, it tends to have some sort of presence about it. It sort of announces itself and everyone else sort of sees it. Um, I love games where I don't know understand the title because it's in another language. So I've just Googled the name of the game. So Nekojima is the Japanese term that means cat islands.
Yep.
And it refers to islands in Japan where there are more feral cats than human residents.
Yep.
I've never
Yeah,
knew
right.
that existed.
There you go. And I will. And it's also worth saying as well. Look, I think this game will be a game that will go off on our game day.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
for anyone who hasn't purchased a ticket yet, we will be giving away a copy of this game. So Let's Play Games was nice enough to give us 2 copies. So one copy will be in our library, but the other copy will be a game that we will be giving away during our raffle.
What's the
on
website
game day.
for
So
this game day, Damo?
it is Sydney. Actually, no, that's a really good question. Actually, I'm
It's
terrible with memory.
www.sydneyfamilygameday.com.
That's
There it
it.
is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry,
So
memory
That's all
is
right.
terrible. But I will say, so if anyone hasn't bought a ticket yet, please do so. We will absolutely have a copy of Nekojima to give away. We'll also
And
be
to play on
teaching.
the day. Yeah.
Yes, we will be teaching how to play the game on the day.
That's
Ooh.
right. So that was Nekojima, which is wait a minute. I had the designers right here. It is designed by David Kimona and Karen Ewan, and it is published by Unfriendly Games. If you are it's published by and the publisher here in Australia is Let's Play Games Australia. So if you are if this sounds like a fun game, you will see it at the Family Game Day, and I honestly cannot recommend this enough for just a really fun, light game that you can play with your kids. This is what
I
this
think
channel, why we
it's
did this channel. It's great.
I think it's definitely going to be a game that's like permanently set up and played all day.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, like, because you could just put it on a table and go, yeah, go for it. And you don't
Yeah.
even need
Yeah,
chairs.
totally.
Stand up, stand around. You have a go. Get in. Have a go. Let's see how we go.
It barely needs a teach. It'll be one of those ones where, as the people, even the next people come in, like, oh, we'll quickly show you how to play because it's that fast.
Absolutely.
And then,
Love
yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Anyway, that gets a big thumbs up from us here at the Board Game Gateway. That's Nekojima by David Kimona and Karen Ewan. So we are going to now move from our Gateway game. We're going to move into our final section for today's podcast, which is our discussion topic, which this week was something that I had a thought about, given the fact that we have had a lot of games come out recently that are relying on previous titles. These are games like Isle of Cats Duo, Tokaido Duo, Splendor Jewel, all of these kind of things. But what it got me thinking about, rather than thinking about duo games, it got me thinking about the idea of that it has felt recently that a lot of Kickstarters and a lot of games such are coming out now and seem to be falling into the trap of what I call the movie cycle trap, which is sequelitis and relying on other known IPs, where the golden age of cinema seems to be behind us now, and we are well and truly in the comic book franchise, time of these days. But does that mean do you feel like we are hitting that here in the board gaming world? I start to see companies such as Asmodee, Simon, these big companies which are now becoming much more profit focused, and I'm feeling like they're starting to run into that trap. I want to open the floor to you gentlemen here. Have you felt the same thing? Do you disagree with me on this particular instance? But I would like to open the floor to you and to ask the people here now, people who are listening as well, to leave us a comment on do you agree or disagree and have an example of either way. But I'm going to open the floor to any of you guys, and I'll come back and chime in later as we go with this. But I want to open the floor to you.
I just want to say, probably up until 3 years ago, I thought there was only one June board game. Now there's like 10 of June board games. Like, what did they release? Like one
and me
movie,
both.
and they were like, let's make 10 board games. Like,
Yeah.
I found out the hard way. I bought the game, took it home, opened it up, thinking I knew how to play it, and it was not the correct game.
you
So
open the original June, not the
Not June
remastered
Imperium.
version.
and it's funny because really only the original June has really any right to be to call it to actually say we are close to the theme, because June is about competing houses and stuff like that, and it's the original Dune is a negotiation game more than anything
Oh, I
else.
thought it was
I
a war game on the planet.
It is. It's like it's very it's very TI. It is really
Yeah,
really close to
very
TI, but a
TI.
lot of it, but a lot of it is. I'd argue it's more negotiation than TI. And but the point I'm making is that unlike let's say Dune Imperium, fantastic game, love it. You could have put any theme on there, and it would have been an equally good game.
yeah.
So yeah, and look, I'm probably gonna cop some flack from that one from that comment, but
And the hardcore Dune fans.
yeah, I stand by it. I think it could have been any theme, and Dune Imperium would have been fine. So anyway,
To yeah. To answer your question though, Neil, I'm not too sure how I feel about whether it's sort of being overused or not, or whether they're falling into the trap. Like you have a look at games, like you've played a lot of Splendor, and then you go and play Splendor Duel. Obviously, like they could have made that game and called it something else and used a different theme and name and that sort of stuff. But I felt like that would have actually made it harder for me as the player because I would have had to. It would have felt like I was learning everything from scratch. Whereas the fact that I had played Splendor already actually sort of enhanced the experience for me and made it easy to jump into. There's less to learn, and it probably would have felt like a heavier game without it. And I feel like that sort of continues on with a lot of these games.
See, what made me think about this was not necessarily Splendid Duel, because I think Splendid Duel is a very good example of taking a game which is, and making it a very cutthroat two-player game. However, in saying that, the reason that this kind of came up was we have a discussion group that talks about board games, sometimes way too much than we probably should be when we should be working.
There's never too much.
But one of the things that got brought up was that a lot of these games that seem to be getting, at least, especially in the duo treatment, Tokaido Duo, Splendor, Isle of Cats, etc.
Seven Wonders.
Seven Wonders, right? A lot of these games are actually good at two players. Splendor, for example, is actually really good at two players because it is a race between you and the other player. Isle of Cats Duo, which has just been announced, got one. There are these games that I don't know specific. Now, and look, I want to be very clear. I have said on this podcast, I like a lot of the duo versions better than I like the previous versions. But part of the attraction of the board gaming hobby for me has been finding games and themes and IPs that have nothing to do with anything and going, what is this? I want more of it. A big example of this for me is the Undaunted series. Yes, it uses a World War II theme, which is well and truly used, but it is a brand new game under a system with a new name that means nothing to another previous game. Now, it itself now also has Undaunted Battle of Britain, Undaunted.
Well, they got the rebrand sci-fi one as well.
Absolutely, and
but now it's Undaunted is more a mechanic thing.
Yes, right, and so, but this is what I mean, which is that my mind is kind of conflicted sometimes because when I hear Undaunted, I know what mechanic or sort of game that I'm going into, and I agree with you, Joel, that that's actually a very good point. Not something I really thought, but and this kind of begs the question then is, like, we start to associate game mechanics with titles. Undaunted is a two-player back and forth as a specific thing. Splendor has a specific thing.
Pandemic is also its own little mechanic name brand now too.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I just want to make sure, like, and I say this, and I'm bringing up this topic fully aware of the fact that we have now got more board games ever coming out than we've ever had before. Kickstarter, GameFound, all of these things are coming out. So I'm fully aware of that. But I do wonder if we are bypassing the hidden gem for the well-known commodity. I don't know.
I think I'm kind of gonna like, maybe it's devil's advocate. I'm not sure, but it's like I can see one aspect of it, and it's more so where board gaming becomes more of a collector's thing than a gaming thing. I feel like, and And that is very much the case in a number of large Kickstarter titles, like your Zombicides of the world, like your the
Your CMON
Marvel
in general.
series. Yeah, like the name of the game is lost on me, but I know it's got like a whole lot of like little chibi minis and stuff, and people are collecting the entire
Are you talking
sets.
about Unmatched?
No.
Okay.
It's a Marvel series by CMON.
Right.
And it's a super lightweight battler. It's like a family friendly Marvel
Marvel
based.
United, I think. Is it that?
Maybe, yeah. And so you have that where I look and I haven't played it, so I'm gonna put my hands in the air and say, and I apologize if I say this wrong. But the impression I'm getting is that it's not necessarily the exact same game, but it's a similar game every time. You just get more and more and more content. But I tend to wonder how much of that content actually seems fresh and interesting. And so I would then argue they're more so appealing to the fans of the series to then collect more stuff. So I agree with you in that regard,
Mm.
Nee. And I would put Zombicide in this collection, in sort of this group as well. Even to some degree, sort of Cthulhu, Death May Die. Like they're they're still fulfilling the current season 3 and the new standalone box, and they're already announcing season 4. Now, yes, there are new scenarios, so on and so forth, but I don't know, but and maybe it's not as bad as, let's say, the Zombicides or not as much into that realm, but I think there is a little bit of that there as well. Now, what I would say, and this touches on your point, Joel, is I think this has kind of been happening for a long time anyway. There was a period where board games were all about subsistence farming. I'm looking at my shelf now. I can see 5 games that are all about subsistence farming. It was just like the go-to theme, or it would be.
I'll be honest, I don't even know what that means.
Like
So basically,
farmland,
like
the UA Rosenbergs of the
farming.
world, Lowlands,
Yeah.
Caverna, Puerto
just-
Rico, that kind of stuff.
Just farming in general. So quite literally, it's all about, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to get some goods and I'm going to get some wheat. I'm going to use
Sheep.
that wheat to go buy sheep. And then those sheep are going to breed more sheep. And then I'm going to turn those sheep into something. And then I'm going to get points.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's why I kind of think like the theme. So it's like if we're talking about themes in general, and just those themes are just kind of like repeating and then resulting in people just purchasing those type of games anyway. I've got a feeling that was kind of happening regardless.
But I think
in
it's
the hobby.
because a lot of board games come out of Germany.
Possibly, and there was a period that they were being designed by a small subset
Yeah.
of designers, successful designers, I will say, and that was their shtick. But I will say, I think there may be a little bit of laziness in the hobby.
100%.
Picking a theme and then going, but I don't think it's rife yet, excusing all the monopolies that exist out there, because
We don't
Sure.
talk about that. Yeah.
we don't talk about that. But I see it, but I don't think it's rife at this point in time.
Look,
But
I
I am concerned that it may be.
don't understand, right? So behind me, I've got a game called Mage Knight, and this game is fantastic. It's up there as one of the best solo experiences, big, heavy, complex games you can get. And you can still buy it today. It was released a while back, but you can still buy it. It's still in print, and that there's a rethemed remaster version that just has Star Trek all over it, and the mechanics are pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same game. Battlestar Galactica received the same treatment. You can't get that game anymore, new, but now it's a Cthulhu rethemed called Unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like, why did I understand you can't get BSG, but why did the Mage Knight remake
Well,
need to be Star
I know
Trek?
and the BSG one was a publisher issue.
It was,
that,
but like,
yeah.
why do you need to
Yeah.
retheme a game to become like space and sci-fi when you can get the RPG, tropey one, and it's still today.
And I think this is
Yeah,
where my question kind of started, which was that it's very obvious why this is happening, and it's money chasing, and
Yeah.
rightly so. Like, board gaming is a business. I don't deny that this is a business and that people are trying to make a living, so they will follow the themes, the trends, that kind of stuff. That doesn't make sense, but I'm worrying, and I haven't seen it yet. But I'm wondering if by following and chasing especially the big companies chasing the trends of the market rather than trying to innovate on something, whether or not we will see less games like Arcs, less games like these big scythes, for example, these things that hit the market and completely pivot where we're going. The Gloom Havens, which hit the market and just go, you know what, I'm going to focus and make this the best game and pivot it that way. And all of a sudden, Gloomhaven comes out, and the amount of dungeon crawlers that comes out just goes like it skyrockets, right? That kind of thing. The idea of Scythe comes out, and the theme of like, okay, these kind of Euro, board presence games increase. And I'm just hoping. I don't want to linger on this too because I don't want to think it's
Well,
all
look,
doom and gloom.
Scythe to me is a game that sort of initially mixed a few genres, and now you're seeing more and more games be innovative,
Yeah.
mixing different genres, and then you get a game like Dune Imperium 5 years later or so, and that's I think that took some influences from Scythe.
Yeah,
It's
Well,
hard too because if you consider that the person making the product thinks that they have a great product, it's going to make people happy. They're going to make some really good memories around it. They're really going to enjoy the time, right? And then you realize that if we throw a Marvel sticker on that exact product, now 100,000 times more people are going to see it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'll make money as well, but is that necessarily a bad thing? That now more people are going to play a game where they have great memories and they enjoy the time, and where
Well-
if you had your generic theme before that you came up with yourself that wouldn't have sold as many copies, are you what's the right decision?
Yeah, look, I 100% agree with you. Like, I think this is actually a good thing for the hobby because, again, excusing the whole monopoly thing, which is not a good thing for the hobby. I will argue that point. It's nothing against Monopoly, but no one needs 20 different copies of Monopoly released in a year. No one needs to buy them all.
A year, try every day.
I know it seems like that, but the reason why I think we're in a good place and why it's important to for some games to latch on to particular themes, or even in some cases design for the theme, is because it gets the board game into more mainstream stores. The more board games that make it into mainstream stores, and I'm not talking about your Hasbro games, I'm talking about your hobbyist board games. The more of those that make it into mainstream stores, the more people that play them, the more people that want to design them, the more people then want to play them again, and it should just continue to be something that feeds itself and grows. Like, really good example, King of Tokyo that we spoke about today. Had Magic never happened and taken off, Richard Garfield never would have designed that game. And the reason why Magic took off is because he had a winner. Wizards of the Coast managed to get that in a lot of hobby stores and eventually mainstream stores and things like that. Richard Garfield gets his name. He gets accolades. Now, he didn't go straight from Magic to King of Tokyo. There were other games in between, but the point is that because that design got in there, he's in mainstream stores. Now, I know, and the thing about Magic, you could argue he hopped on D&D tropes.
Yeah,
Magic is just it's just D&D tropes, but no one would ever fault him for it.
Yeah,
that's right. But I'd never fault him for it because he took or Wizards of the Coast. I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but they latched a known theme or a known IP in this case, D&D, without actually calling it D&D, onto a popular card game, and it sold. So I kind of think you have to, whether you want to see it as like a deal with the devil, which I kind of disagree with, but I think it's important because going back to our earlier topic about theme versus sorry, I was going to say functionality, which is wrong, but
Human
mechanics.
Yeah.
Theme is what gets people picking up the box off the shelf.
Mm.
So yes, I'm okay with it as long as it doesn't turn into Monopoly.
All right. Look, I think we could. This is one of those interesting design topics that we talk about in board game that we could continue going on. But I would like to pass the topic off to our listeners. I'd like you to leave a comment on either Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you happen to be listening to this. I'd like you to leave a comment what you think about this particular subject. Do you think that you like seeing a lot of these sequels / same designers / themes going on? Do you want to see more individuality? I would love to hear from you. We have been inundated with comments and things going on lately, and we are loving it. So please let us know. We will endeavor to call you out and not call you out but actually read it out and actually, have you be part of this podcast. It is important to us. So what we would like to do then, I would like to pass it off to you, as I've just said, and we are going to wrap this one up here. This is a bit longer than our usual sort of podcast length, but that's all right. We actually had some really good discussion tonight, so I'm really liking that. I would like to give a final shout out for our game day, which is Sydney's Family Game Day, coming up on January 11th from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. at the Campbelltown Catholic Club. It is going to be a full day worth of board gaming. We have got tickets still available. They are actually selling faster than we thought they were, and we are selling a lot more.
Running out of spaces.
Yeah, we're actually this is going really good. So if you haven't bought your ticket yet, make sure you go to www.sydneysfamilygameday.com and you can purchase your tickets there. You can buy singles, doubles, family passes, which are 4 tickets, or you can buy an evening only ticket as well. There is a lot of options there for you. So on behalf of myself, Mr. Damien, who is above me in the window, Mr. Ralph to my right, and Mr. Joel up into our top right, we'd like to say thank you for listening to today's podcast, and we will see you in episode 65. We'll see you then.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.